Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jeff. Today, I got a topic that I've been asked quite a bit to talk about, and this one I think is going to be a good one. And that is the topic of how I was able to land my first software engineering job, especially as a person that finished like near the bottom of my class in my boot camp. I'm actually kind of excited to talk about this one, mainly because it's like, even till this day, right? It's like, I think back to that period. I think back to doing those interviews and the grind of getting that first job. As anybody that's been through this process period more so now than ever, I'm someone that's like experienced the ups and downs and all the rejections and having high hopes for certain jobs and not getting through, or doing good on interviews and not passing through, that kind of thing, or just getting ghosted by jobs that you had high interest in altogether. And even till this day, as a staff engineer at a major tech company, I look back at that time period and I'm like, that was easily one of the top five most difficult moments in my career. And I figured this would be a great one to talk about. I think that another thing that I've been thinking about is that more so than ever, without fluffing it up, right? The industry has changed a bit, although there is still a lot of great opportunities left and a lot of really talented people entering the field every single day. I think that there is a realistic possibility that you can, do your boot camp, get your certificate, finish your CS degree, and still not be able to land a job after countless interviews, that kind of thing. And there's definitely no such thing as like automatic job placement in our profession, at least anymore. And so I just wanted to be able to talk about my experience, what I was going through, what I was doing day in and day out, and hopefully some of these tips will help you out. And of course, right, like these things are things that I definitely reflect back on, and I'm grateful that I had these thought processes that led me to get some success. And I want to give you a couple disclaimers. Two things I want to give you a couple disclaimers before I start. And then secondary, I want to give you kind of the background story where I was at. So so it makes more sense and see if this is even more relatable to you. Okay, so first, background, right? Just finished my boot camp, cost me $20,000 in debt. Took a loan out for that. So I think I just took like the regular loan that they offered for the boot camp. I came from construction before that, graduating college with no prospects, couldn't land a job in my profession, and did self-taught for about a year, and unfortunately was not able to find any success. And that's actually what led me to the boot camp. And so I didn't have any like connections, right? Every referral I asked for was like basically cold references that I did reach out to, that kind of thing. And I didn't have anybody that was like, that could hook me up with an automatic job or get me through at a company or that kind of thing. And in secondary, coding at that point was definitely my number one, pretty much my only, in my opinion, my only valuable skill. I was pretty good with a hammer and construction tools at that point, but I would say that this, for the first time in my life, I had something that was like tangible. And up to that point, I think I was feeling very comfortable with finally building out, side projects, working on things. And I was definitely a proficient coder, but I was nowhere an expert in any sort of domain. And I was primarily looking for front-end jobs at that point because that's what the bootcamp taught me. Okay. And so second, the disclaimer I want to make is that this video isn't about any sort of magical trick or, special hack that I did to be able to help myself get through and land that job. More than anything, I think it was just trial and error, and so many of the things I learned along the way is why I went through this process. So no tricks here. In fact, I think it's going to be more of a video about, talking about the difficult grind and all the strategies that I went through. So I hope this helps. Okay. Number one, the first thing that really definitely helps me a lot, and as I mentioned before, finishing near at the bottom of my class, I made a really active decision when I finished on what I was going to do during my job search process. And one thing that I really am grateful that the path that I went after is that I realized that this wasn't going to be a time for myself to stop coding. And in fact, I really wanted to make up some of the gaps that I missed during the boot camp, and hopefully to continue to gain proficiency in different realms. So right after I finished, the things that I went after was I did a hackathon, I did a couple side projects, and I kept on doing leak code problems. One aspect that I went after that I really thought hard about is like all of the kind of stigmas that it comes with becoming a boot camper. And I really wanted to just minimize some of those attributes. And one of the attributes that pretty much everyone says is like boot campers, can't code, they don't know fundamentals. And looking back, right, I think that especially being an experienced dev now, there's definitely some truths to that. And even though at the end, I never became an expert at doing leak code or algorithms, I did try my best, and with my classmates did get through a couple hundred of them, and actively every single day was doing probably 3 to 5 algorithms a day, just starting with the easies, not trying to think too hard about it, not trying to force myself to do any of the mediums or hard questions, and just keeping my ego in check and understanding where I was. And my bet was just at the very least, be able to hold my own on those very basic ones and be able to get through on some of those. And so that's kind of what I went out after to do. And by the time I landed my first job, I think that by that time, I definitely did surpass some of my classmates. A lot of my classmates, and even till this day, right? Like working in the industry, I can't tell you how many times I've seen folks immediately stop coding afterwards, not sharpen their skills. And I think that's a big mistake looking back. And luckily I had the passion for programming altogether. And of course it was like, again, I mentioned this earlier, but it was my first time ever having a truly technical skill that I could finally actually go look at API documents and pull down tokens and make useful products rather than doing the hello world kind of mock projects, right? And so I took full advantage of that. And, I think I'm really, really happy that I took that route and basically turned finishing close to last in my class as into more of a lesson than something that I beat myself over and not being able to, keep up with some of my more proficient teammates. And I think by the time, right, again, mentioning that, by the time I got my first job, I think I basically had another 6 months under my belt of programming consistently day in and day out, because I didn't have a job at that time, right? And so I could easily just go all in and keep on practicing and programming day in, day out. Okay, so number 2, this is actually one, now that anytime anybody asks me about mentorship or doing the job search, I always ask them this. And this is something that I luckily stumbled upon while I was doing the job search. And that is understanding the strategy and having a consistent strategy day in and day out. Being able to separate the concept of getting through on the portal, getting in front of the job interview is a totally different game than what it takes to be a proficient programmer, right? Those are two separate things that involve networking, understanding how to talk to recruiters, understanding what type of jobs you're applying to. And for myself, actually, over time, I just solely went for the cold apply approach, which was just going through LinkedIn and applying for jobs, mainly because I saw the best outcomes for myself and it personally fit my personality type the most. One thing that really helped me was as I was applying for so many jobs, I started seeing certain patterns and just strategies that seemed to work a little bit better. Like for one example that I like to use is that after I was applying to a lot of jobs, I was seeing jobs that actually had a much higher hit rate. For example, whenever I saw a job that wasn't quite as sharpened, and I always use those generic Google ones that are like software engineer, has all the technologies, right? That's probably been revised 1,000 times, and you always see them on LinkedIn as kind of the gold standard of what a perfect job posting looks like. But there's also postings out there by companies that, they got posted by a general recruiter that doesn't only do software engineering jobs, and the resumes are just not quite as sharpened, right? Like they have JavaScript misspelled. They have things that they have technologies in there that don't quite make sense with the type of tech stack that they're working towards, or they have an unsharpened description of the job posting. And whenever I saw those, I was always lit up and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to apply to this because I know at least somebody's going to look at it on the other end. And then stacking that, right? Stacking these strategies. Another strategy that I always found to work out well was there was never a better time to apply to a job than when it was first posted, like 1 or 2 days out. And so it's figuring that out, then kind of figuring out the eye of which companies and which I guess sectors like healthcare or retail, that kind of thing, or government was hiring heavily at that time, and just stacking those concepts together. Really, I saw my hit rate just go up so much as I kept on applying for jobs. And so it's like, honestly, this aspect is so hard it's something that I really can't, it's hard to describe, right? It's like, the way I can describe it is anyone that's like gone out to purchase a car, for example, if you're not very technical on cars, let's say a Honda Civic, every Honda Civic in that generation looks the same to you, whether it has 50,000 miles or 100,000 miles. But once you started diving deep, you start seeing the small details of the various like models in that generation. For example, like in that generation, right? It's like the earlier models might have recalls. The later ones might have a newer engine model. Certain paint colors in that generation may be good and bad. And that's all those small intricate details that lead you into finding, the best deal and the most efficient car, and, the ones that the dealerships are willing to part ways with at a good deal. And if you don't, it's like you go to a dealership, every single Honda looks the same. And that's kind of how I describe the LinkedIn job posting market. There are those small details, but you don't see them until you do enough and you start hitting your strategy enough times. One of the reasons why I actually, in the end, and of course, like, I don't think this is the best strategy in any way. I think this is just a strategy. I think it was kind of just like working at something that if it's not broken, just keep on working at it. And that's ultimately what I ended up sticking with, was just doing like a bunch of cold applies. Okay. So one of the last ones I want to talk about here is, I don't know why this is a thing, but the job process is always such like a individual solo mission that I'm incredibly grateful to not have had that in the beginning. And I actually had a lot of great teammates that I met at the bootcamp that were right by my side, where we held each other accountable in the job search. A lot of times, right, it's like we think about getting help and we think about finding somebody that's ahead of us and trying to help us accomplish, where we're at. That's always fine and dandy. But I actually think that in that moment, the most helpful thing was finding someone that was in the same exact position that I was in. Every single day, right? It's like, I just remember the days of like my teammate would ask me, hey, I finished my job apps. I did my 30 job apps today. You want to jump back onto linked lists? Or do you want to jump onto, one of the other algorithms today? And those little accountability things just made it so much smoother and easier to just day in and day out accomplish that same thing. In no way did we spend hours and hours doing this all day long, right? Like applying for jobs was just a couple hours in a day, maybe 2 hours, and doing algorithms, we maybe did like 2 or 3 hours. But it's the idea of having someone by your side doing that and just being able to accomplish that day in and day out, which makes those days go by so much faster rather than just setting that schedule for yourself and forcing yourself to work at it. I don't think that the job search, I think the way most of us should think about this is like, it's just one big marathon, one big grind of like rejections and going at it over and over again. And in no ways do you have to do this by yourself. And I don't urge anybody to ever do this by themselves if you can. And so if it's possible, you got to take advantage of, folks, your classmates, that kind of thing, and make that schedule and almost turn this process into like having a gym buddy or a workout buddy in terms of applying for these jobs and doing these algorithms. It just makes things so much easier. And not only that, at one point, like we had 3 of us doing this all together at once. We were all able to just have our own individual intake and outlook on what the job market was looking at, like as we were applying to just so many jobs. And we were able to give each other hints, or if one of us bombed a job interview, we were like instantly able to refer somebody else to that job interview. And although none of us actually landed one of those jobs, right, it was another great possibility to get that practice in. And I can't urge how useful that was in the end. And I think if it was just me, right, there's no way I would have accomplished that much in that short period of time. So I think that's number one there, is like, try to find a buddy. Don't do this alone if you can. And even right now, it's like all the reach out that I have is like, I kind of wish I could just help pair some of the people that are reaching out to me with each other and have you guys go at it and, work towards applying to jobs together, at least so you're not doing it alone. Okay, I hope that was helpful in some ways. Last thing I want to leave this with is, man, this process is just not, unfortunately for a lot of us, right, it's just not a straight line. It's not a A, B, C, D, steps, and then boom, you got a job. It's a grind, but you're not alone. And I just want to say that, once you get past this process, at this first job, things do get significantly easier to try to get that second job, and just keep on grinding away. And, I hope this helps. If you have anything that you want to talk about specifically on this topic or what I talked about, please feel free to reach out. If not, I'll talk to you on the next one. Latest.